Good morning. I am Liselle, and
I'm Sellina.
And we've been invited here today to tell you about two courses that we teach on at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. We teach on the Bachelor of Arts degree in Applied Theatre Drama Education.
And I'm the course leader for the Master's programme in Applied Theatre.
Both courses teach and train students about applied theatre, or arts and social inclusion. We also, apart from teaching about the practice, the practical work, we teach about how we might interrogate, question, and theorise the work. We present sometimes at academic conferences due to the professionalisation and the interrogation of the work. So we often write down, well, no, the work is being published. And so this morning, we're both going to be presenting to you from word papers. So we just apologise that we'll be doing a lot of this. Before we start, we'd like just to thank the British Council for inviting us over. We'd like to thank Nicholas, Isabella, and Eva. We've also selected some photographs from some of the projects that our students engage with and some of the communities and individuals that they're working in collaboration with. Okay. I think, Sellina.
Okay. The Royal Central School of Speech and Drama is a specialist institution of higher education. It's a hybrid institution, so it's a university conservatoire that encompasses conservatoire levels of actor training and coaching and higher education, industry engagement, and in a research environment. It's one of the leading acting training schools in the UK, with household names such as Laurence Olivier, Harold Pinter, and Judi Dench among its alumni. It's also at the cutting edge of training for stage performance, puppetry, lighting, and stage design, as well as making new forms of theatre. It has a long tradition of training students to work in drama education and applied theatre. It's a member of the University of London, and in the past few years it's also grown as a research centre. At present, Central has about 923 students on taught undergraduate programmes. There are 3 of these undergraduate programmes, and each of them takes 3 years to complete. It also has 276 master's students studying across 14 specialist master programmes, as well as 2 teacher training courses, one in drama and one in media, and it has over 40 PhD students. It's probably the largest provider of specialist drama and theatre-related postgraduate courses in the UK. Today, we're specifically going to be focusing on the applied theatre courses. About a third of our students take applied theatre courses at Central. These courses deliver training at bachelor's and master's level through community productions, industry placements, and collaborative outreach, with students assessed on placement and in collaboration with industry partners and while they're working with community groups.
The bachelor's degree is the longest established and largest provision of education and community work using drama in higher education in the UK. Both the bachelor's and master's degrees are constantly evolving and developing in response to the needs of the international and national applied theatre industry. We also, incidentally, have just received funding for 3 years to develop a 1-year full-time course for adults with learning disabilities in performance making at Central, which is quite a moment, really, because Central is known as one of the best performance and actor training schools internationally. It's a joint venture with one of our industry partners, Access All Areas, a theatre company for adults with learning disabilities. The field of applied theatre, it's flourishing. It's been flourishing for a long time. It has a celebratory and a troubled past. With this in mind, this celebration will offer a brief insight into the courses, and through this, we would like to share with you some of these current challenges that are happening in the field of applied theatre practice. We're also interested in asking if applied arts practice creates empowerment opportunities for marginalised individuals and communities, or is it just another form of containment? We hope that our presentation will offer some questions about this training in the field. Helen Nicholson, who is one of the key academic and practitioners in the field, defines applied theatre. She says it's an umbrella term that encompasses dramatic activities that happen outside of conventional mainstream theatre institutions and which are specifically intended to benefit individuals, communities, and societies. Applied theatre is concerned with developing new possibilities for everyday living, rather than segregating theatre going from other aspects of life.
Students from both the Master's and the Bachelor's courses engage with diverse applied theatre practices with different community groups and individuals in a range of different sites that might be educational, cultural, social, health, or community-based, where theatre is made by, for, and with a diverse range of participants. This might include drama and theatre in education settings, theatre in health settings, theatre for development, theatre in prisons, community, heritage, reminiscent, documentary, testimonial theatre, children's theatre, autobiographical theatre, site-specific, disability, and theatre and war, all types of products and processes, and probably a lot more than I've had time to mention there.
In both the Bachelor's and the Master programmes, students work in the field and are supported and guided by professional applied theatre facilitators, practitioners. Students develop their pedagogical practice, their facilitation skills, delivering considered participative theatre, drama and performance projects with, for and by particular community groups and in educational settings in collaboration with host organisations or community groups. Considerations are key around the work, such as the ethics of the practice, ideas around what is a community, what about the levels of participation, or if you're not from a community and I enter into that community, what needs to be set up? Do I need to be invited to work into that community? Issues of representation, as well as the dialogical, aesthetic, and pedagogical nature of the work, is all integral to the making, facilitation, and critical evaluation and outcome of the projects.
Annually, we have about 250 industry placements and projects happening in the professional field of applied theatre, both inside the UK and internationally. These might include, and do include, working with pavement dwellers and people living with domestic violence in Mumbai in India.
We have projects in South Africa working in townships where students work with Sabikwa, a community arts organisation working with elders. We use applied puppetry practices to work with elders or adults with dementia. We have devising projects working with new arrivals and refugees in prisons, and it goes on. Theatre in schools, for example.
We'd now like to consider two very different projects, focusing in depth right in on the practice at a micro level. In doing this, we'll introduce some of the theory and the critical debates we raise with the students as part of this training.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a very specific drama in education project called The Boy in the Dress, Gender Identity, which used a participatory drama in education method known as Mantle of the Expert, or where the child becomes the expert. And it was a method that's very well established and was coined by somebody called Dorothy Heathcote, and is quite contentious, which is why I'm quite interested in it. I developed and delivered the project with my first year undergraduate bachelor students. The Boy in the Dress aimed to encourage children to use this drama form to explore the notion and to become more aware of the fluidity and construction of their own gender, and in doing so to become more aware of their own roles within the regulation of gender conformity. At Central, where we work, as part of the students' learning, the students engage with the histories, the politics, and the sort of current context of what's happening now, because obviously, we're working in real communities. And so this project, which is an example of a drama and education project, we would then go through a process where the students would look at drama in schools, drama in education, so that we can identify what sort of project we might be creating, and hopefully for you, it'll give you a little bit of the reasons why I decided to embark on this project. So very briefly, historically, drama in schools in the UK has a very rich and complex past that has clearly influenced and impacted on the current education system that we have in the UK today to create a more progressive and child-centred approach to teaching and learning, as well as appearing as in its own right as a subject. Drama, as we know, develops emotional engagement, social, personal, critical thinking, cognitive, communication, imaginative and creative skills. Students learn through direct and live experiences within a fictional drama frame environment. The last several decades, previous British governments have funded research into the social and educational benefits of engagement in participatory arts in schools. We had creative partnerships, which was where the children engaged with drama and the arts in exciting and innovative new ways through partnerships between the professional arts industries, community and education. It was an evidence-based programme that reached hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children and young people in schools. These arts education programmes became embedded within aspects of our education system. It went on for about 15 years. Because it recognised that arts, as we know, support the reduction of social exclusion and therefore impact on children and young people's engagement in society. As recent as 2009, there was the Primary National Curriculum Review published in the UK. And it clearly used this evidence, and it recommended that the arts be placed at the heart of the primary school. However, by 2012, the now current government has retracted this and is now in a continuing process of culling the arts from schools, primary and secondary. A government paper now states, in fact, on the plane here yesterday, on the front cover, Academics Gov is the education minister for the UK. And basically he's basically removing the arts subjects from the curriculum because he wants it to return to a rote learning system. And it says, of course, this rote learning will not develop children's ability to think. Sorry, this is obviously criticising him. This rote learning will not develop children's ability to think, including problem solving, critical understanding and creativity. So people are up in arms at the moment in the UK. Drama and the arts are seen as subjects more and more as not worthy of study. So they're completely ignoring this evidence that's demonstrating the worthwhileness of participatory arts. Celebrities, arts professionals, politicians, community leaders, teachers are fighting back. And interestingly, there has been some positive results, but he keeps returning with new sort of culling methods. Alongside this, in 2003, there was a government initiative launched called Every Child Matters. This Every Child Matters focused on children's well-being and not simply exam results in schools. The initiative of Every Child Matters was a response to the growing awareness of the immense difficulties that some children experience. And there was a sort of sea of change. It had 5 outcomes: for a child to be healthy, and for schools to basically deliver this, to make sure of this, for a child to be healthy, to stay safe, to enjoy and achieve, to make a positive contribution to society, and to achieve economic well-being. Agencies also worked in partnership with schools, including social work services, child and adolescent mental health services. Every Child Matters had a huge impact in schools, and the participatory arts were key to delivering this. However, in 2010, the current government once again banned the scheme. It was delivered for 10 years. It was extraordinary. They banned it. They didn't just ban it, but they banned the phrase. We're not allowed to use the phrase, every child matters. It's now changed to, help children achieve. The whole child-centred approach is in the process of being removed in favour of a narrow focus on educational standards and rote learning. What's the consequences of this? The consequence of this has meant that there is now a growing number of children becoming more marginalised and being excluded from accessing mainstream education. Incidences of bullying, self-harm is on the increase. And there's obviously a number of reasons for this. Of course, different reasons and forms of institutionalised discrimination, which is not being addressed in schools as an initiative. One of those forms is that of gender identity. Now for the project. The Boy in the Dress drama project tells the story. It was actually based on this children's book, The Boy in the Dress. The Boy in the Dress drama project tells the story of Dennis, a boy who likes to play football, but he also likes to secretly wear dresses. It's been written that society places boys in a gender straight jacket based on fixed ideas of masculinity. Society, as we know, has powerful ways of shaming boys and girls into compliance with the message that real boys or real girls don't do that. When a young boy wants to wear feminine clothing or starts crying or wants to play with toys that are not traditionally associated with boys, or when girls refuse to play with the doll's house or act in maybe a more dominant, aggressive way, this can lead to experiences of shame and pain associated with name-calling and teasing. The Anti-Bullying Alliance in the UK produced a report that states that these constructed gender constraints can deny children and young people with a sense of security and self-esteem, which leads to high incidences of depression, bullying, suicidal feelings, and self-mutilation. And we're obviously also talking about those children who might be transgender, or those children who might be gay, or might be read as transgender or gay. There was one young boy, one young person. In primary school, he said, I'd always been more feminine than the stereotypical boy, but there was a sort of gender policing. That's what the kids did. I started getting picked on for not being boy enough, not liking football and not thinking that fights are fun, and just not fitting into the stereotype. They ostracized me, laughed at me. I'd get attacked. The Boy in the Dress drama gender identity project was developed with my students using this drama and education method called Mantle of the Expert, which I'm just quickly going to define. Mantle of the Expert is a cross-curricular dramatic inquiry approach to teaching and learning that aims to empower pupils in the classroom by making them the experts of the story. The teacher also works from inside the story with the participants. The children in Mantle of the Expert become the ones who know, the experts, and the teacher becomes the one who doesn't know. The role of the expert shifts the power from the teacher to the student. In Dorothy Heathcote's words, the Mantle of the Expert creates real experiences in fictional, boundaried worlds. So the teacher basically, there's a technique called teacher in role or facilitator in role, where I would become a character inside the story with the children. Often quite a low status character. The Boy in the Dress project was influenced by another research project called No Outsiders that happened in 2006 to 2009 in primary schools. And it also wanted to challenge discrimination against those who do not comply with norms and stereotypes that keep girls and boys fixed firmly in their gendered places, as well as trying to undo transphobia and homophobia. It found that literature and drama were particularly useful in the power of the imagination to reimagine new possibilities. What the project No Outsiders didn't do, it didn't use such an extensive range of drama participatory techniques. And I was particularly interested to use this Mantle of the Expert with my students. Okay, so I'm now going to quickly share with you some of the outcomes of the Boy in the Dress project, which took the novel, The Boy in the Dress by David Walliams, as a stimulus, as a beginning point to encourage the children to critically explore their notion of gender as a construction and gender stereotyping, and in doing so, to become more aware of their own role in policing this regulation. I will discuss the outcomes through what we call a queer lens. By queer, what I mean simply is we use it as a way of challenging assumptions, a way of working with uncertainties, basically destabilizing what we might consider stable and unquestionable. Exploring what we might take for granted, these taking for granted assumptions, just throwing that out. And therefore breaking down this idea of this very fixed idea that we might, perhaps our society has of gender. The Boy in the Dress project resulted in children aged 10 and 11 in primary school creating performances and engaging with heightened versions of gendered femininity in their primary school. Most recently, my students and myself facilitated a project at a particular primary school in southeast London, and that's the outcomes of that project is what I'm talking about. Okay, the Boy in the Dress project began with the children in role as undercover police. With experience, we developed this through improvisations, with experience in cases involving runaway children. They were informed by the local police officer, myself in role, that Dennis, an 11-year-old boy, and then as quote from the book, an ordinary boy who lives in an ordinary house in an ordinary street, was the best footballer in his school, in the football team, that he's run away and has been missing for 3 days. As the drama evolves, the children learn that Dennis privately wears dresses, which they discover could be one of the reasons, or the reason for his disappearance. The children then playing a number of roles, so they're switching roles. So sometimes they're actually reenacting Dennis, and then they'll return to their role as an undercover cop. Or they'll become the father and his brother. So playing a number of roles, the children author Dennis's private and public experiences by reenacting moments from Dennis's life as they imagine it to be. Through metaphorical exploration and improvisations, the children, in role as experts, grapple with, examine, and confront the gender rules. A significant moment emerges when the undercover police engage in an activity to establish that Dennis's ordinary home has rules created by the father. He lives with his father, his brother, and with Dennis. What are the rules? No talking about mum, no crying, and worst of all, no hugging. In the police station, in this fictional setting, Dennis's dad, who is played by one of my students, arrives. He's got some evidence. He arrives with a bag full of fabrics, dresses, a CD of Madonna's Vogue, and some Vogue magazines, all belonging to Dennis. Dad then awkwardly informs the police that he had confiscated these items from Dennis's bedroom. The police, i.e. the children in role, work in small groups to analyse these items. The children then switch roles because we have decided to bring in some actors, and they become the actors, so that they can help to perform using these pieces of evidence, so they can perform representations of Dennis in his bedroom. In teams, the actors work quickly to recreate images from the magazines by sculpting one another's bodies, draping fabrics, wearing dresses. They choreograph one another, counting, strutting to the Vogue music, bringing a serious, creative playfulness to the task. Because actually, remember, it's about a missing boy. They create a carnivalesque environment, repeating performance acts. This liberating mockery of oppressive norms and taboos are parodied and therefore humanized. This enables the children to go beyond the institutionalized gender norms. The children's classroom is transformed, and the confidently perform their new routines with heightened versions of femininity and heightened campness, as we might see in a drag act, where a man performs as a woman. Within this Mantle of Expert project, all the children are required to imitate gender. And perhaps by doing so, the drag acts expose the imitation of gender itself. We did a sort of evaluation of the project a few weeks later, and we asked the children to reflect on their experiences. Well, we did it to understand how Dennis was feeling, and it really helped. I could be like I've never been at school in front of the class. We got to try on dresses, and every time I went round, I put on different material, and everybody was cheering in a really good way. It felt great. March 2012. Returning to Dennis's bedroom, the final group of 5 children, everyone else is sitting down now. They've returned to their role as police, watching these representations. So we have this final group of 5 children re-performing as Dennis in a dress. As the police are watching, unexpectedly, the music abruptly stops. Dennis's dad appears in the bedroom, staring at the children representing Dennis. He looks at Dennis and says, "You are not my son." I then ask for a volunteer officer to sculpt Dennis into a position that might reflect his response to his father if he could speak. The child sculpts Dennis into a cowering position with his head and eyes lowered. The 4 other children, also representing without any cue, join this coward position and create, the 5 of them, this whole position. One of the children looks at the father and says, "Will you never understand?" And then a magic moment happened. Without any encouragement, other children who were watching the action spontaneously approach Dennis and physically link up with these 4 or 5 children and create a sort of wall of defiance at Dennis's dad. Because some of the children are observing and then make a choice, a conscious choice, to step into the action, they're perhaps able to, within the drama, able to distance themselves and become more aware and more conscious of their learnings, of their constructed beliefs and behaviours within the theme of gender within this project, so that they become Dennis and stand up to the father and transform this classroom into a place of public empathy and activism. Nearly finished. Following on from this father-son confrontation, the children in role as undercover police were asked to discuss their findings of the case so far in relation to Dennis's gender. As teacher in role, I take a very low status here and explain that I don't understand, and I'm totally confused, very confused about the complex nature of gender in this case. And again, a magic thing happens. Well, because my intent, of course, was to place the children again in role now as gender identity experts, and for them to critically reflect and emotionally reflect upon their engagement in the story with their personal experiences. Initially in role, the children share their opinions about Dennis, which then rapidly develops into a child-centred led discussion on gender as a social construct. And the level of discussion was extraordinary. They listen to each other, build on one another's contributions and understandings, share their own personal ideas until there's a sort of consensus around the definition and support for Dennis. The children volunteer what appears to be their own personal gendered experiences in relation to school, their family and their friends. The discussion continues. Some struggle to find the words to express their opinions, but there's no laughter, no ridicule. Instead, a sort of feeling of and sounds of recognition. For example, there was one boy who disclosed that when he was younger, he performed in a tutu. He'd wanted a doll's house. His dad said no. And at this very moment, he was wearing pink pants. The boy brought Dennis's experiences and his own into the non-fictional present, out of any protected role play, to share his previously unimaginable, locked-away self. In summary, the impulse for creating the Boy in the Dress project was really to try to offer a creative, aesthetic, pedagogical space for the children to be able to hold in their minds that Dennis could be any one of them in that classroom, so that they could start to transcend the binary values and dare to step beyond this if they choose to, without fear of recrimination.
In this section of our talk, I'd like to talk about a very different project, a specific theatre in prison project that brought to mind some questions for both my students and myself working on the project. Specifically, when thinking about working in British prisons, the students and I were trying to decide where on a continuum of social intervention and containment this work sits. Does drama in prisons offer a space for social transformation, or is it merely creating a more docile prison population? In other words, is it allowing prisoners to misbehave in a sanctioned space in order to make them model prisoners in other spaces? Or is it offering people the chance to make positive changes in their lives? I've been very troubled by theatre in prison since my first teaching job, which was being an English teacher in a maximum security prison 20 years ago. Here, I want to focus on a project that I've tutored over the last 4 years with students from Central, working in partnership with staff and inmates at Doncaster Prison in England. This is a high security prison that houses about 1,200 male prisoners who are over the age of 21. It's a closed prison, which means that the residents or inmates are never allowed unaccompanied anywhere in the building without an officer or a staff member. This prison is committed to reducing reoffending rates and allowing their inmates safe integration back into the community at the end of their sentences. In the UK, about 47% of inmates reoffend less than a year after they're released. So, 6 bachelor's students work on a drama residency in a prison with between 18 and 25 of Doncaster's residents to create a piece of children's theatre. These residents are all new to Doncaster Prison, and they're all fathers with children living outside. They volunteer to work on the Children's Theatre project over a 2-week period in which they devise and perform a piece of children's theatre. At the end of the residency, the children, partners and extended families of the participants are invited into the prison to see the performance, and the performance is followed by an extended and relaxed prison visit. The Children's Play project is sanctioned by the governor at the prison as part of their Families First programme. This programme aims to keep prisoners in contact with their families to a maximum. Family breakdown during a prison sentence is very common. Nearly half of the prisoners in England and Wales lose complete contact with their families while in prison. Clearly, being in prison changes and destabilises family relationships, and it has been proved that staying in contact with families during imprisonment helps prisoners to maintain these relationships, and it makes reintegration into society easier on release. Staying connected to families while in prison helps to ensure that the inmates also find accommodation and employment on release. In the UK, unemployment and homelessness have been directly linked to offending rates. There's a couple of relevant statistics which I'll just give you briefly. 9 out of 10 prisoners in the UK were excluded from formal school settings. 50% of UK prisoners have a reading age of less than 11. So it's no surprise that 2 out of 3 prisoners were unemployed when they committed their crimes. 1/3 of all prisoners in the UK were also homeless when they committed their crimes. Several studies suggest that prisoners who maintain contact with and receive support from their families whilst in prison have a reduced chance of reoffending. Government reports state that prisoners who receive visits from families are twice as likely to gain employment on release and 3 times more likely to have accommodation arranged. And it's been proved that employment and accommodation are key factors in reducing reoffending rates. It's also worth noting here that 25% of male prisoners in the UK are fathers. So, the Children's Theatre project encourages the fathers in prison to keep in contact with their children. After the play is performed, the residents or inmates and their families are permitted a relaxed visit in which they can talk to, play games with, and interact on a realistic basis with their partners and families. Normal prison visits don't allow for this at all. This provides a powerful incentive for participation in the project. There's clearly a social agenda here that relates to participation and transformation. If unemployment and homelessness are drivers of crime, and employment and housing are drivers in the desistance of crime, then stable family relationships are also key in reducing reoffending rates and the resettlement of prisoners. We can't prove that a project like this reduces reoffending, but the project is allowed to take place with the support of the prison administration because maintaining family contact has been proved to reduce reoffending rates, and the family visit that accompanies this production is linked to that aim. Inmates who are well behaved are entitled to work on a range of creative and applied theatre projects within the prison. And so here it could be suggested that we have a radical form of containment. The promise of seeing family members keeps inmates docile and contained. During the project, the play's inmates not only regulate their own behaviour, but they also regulate that of their peers. The goal for many of the participants clearly is not to devise a piece of theatre and perform a play, but actually they're on the project to spend more time with their families. So Effectively, they're being bribed to take part in a piece of theatre with the promise of seeing their families. This troubles me and my students. In a specific example of how this self-regulation was enacted during the project, I will now describe a short set of events that occurred during the Children's Theatre Project in 2011. This relaxed family visit is a dangerous time for security within the prison. Normally, visits involve a minimum distance being kept between inmates and their families. They're not allowed to touch each other. After the performance, they can touch each other, and therefore the play clearly provides a greater opportunity to smuggle drugs into the prison, as the participants can move freely about and they're less intensely watched than usual. Because of these fears, participants were collectively not only determined to take part in the project, but determined to ensure it ran smoothly. So when a plan to smuggle drugs into the prison was unearthed, rather than report it, the inmates decided to try and stop this attempt themselves. This resulted in one inmate assaulting another as a warning not to put the project at risk. The participant who perpetrated the assault deeply regretted his actions afterwards, but was adamant that this was the only way that the drug smuggling could be stopped and therefore the play could continue. This incident is one of many that raises interesting issues about how theatre might be being used to aid control of transgressive elements within the prison and how it contributes to creating a very docile prison population. We know that participatory arts projects in prisons and other places have the potential to make changes. They also develop a range of soft skills. We know that producing a play demands hard work, technical skill, collaboration, precisely the behaviours that offenders need to rehabilitate. We also know that arts projects have concrete goals, develop concentration, discipline, teamwork, self-esteem, listening, self-awareness, empathy and control. They can also be the gateway to continued education. They create responsibility and positive relationships. But do these soft skills and good intentions justify the docility and in some cases violence that they might also be creating? When interviewed, many of the prisoners said the limited contact and intimacy they had with their children under the normal prison regime meant they were excluded from the minutiae of their children's lives. The inmates believed that these factors exacerbated the negative effects of imprisonment on their children by impeding their ability as fathers, both emotionally and economically. They stated that the play was a tangible manifestation, a symbol of their love for their children, quite literally a gift to their children from their dad. During the project, they felt that they were a key part of their families' lives again, and that for many, the nature of the conversations with their children and partners changed, as the play project was something new and exciting to talk about. The children were keen to know what the play was about, what would their dads be doing. There are numerous examples of the pleasures the children took in their fathers' performances, which clearly it's not possible to describe here. But what was clear was that for these fathers, taking part in a play was quite literally a labour of love, a way to express their love for their children in a manner that's extraordinarily rare in a prison environment. One participant's son adored pirates, and as soon as he heard there was a pirate scene in the play, he actively campaigned for the role of the lead pirate. Once he had the part, he was determined to be authentic, so he actually went to the prison library, which he hadn't done before, to get involved in reading, to discover authentic pirate language. After the play, he described how his son's face literally lit up when he saw his dad on stage as a pirate. The pirates had to perform a dance as part of the show. This was one of the most challenging aspects of the production that took most of the participants well beyond their comfort zone. Although many clearly found learning the dance difficult, they were determined to master it because they knew it would make a better production for their children. This led to inmates secretly practicing their dance moves around the prison and in their cells. At many times during the project, participants said that the only thing that kept them coming back to the rehearsal room when things got tough, i.e. the dance sequence, was that the play wasn't for them. It was for their children. Many said that their motivation for taking part in the play project was to try to make up for the hurts that they felt they'd caused. The play project was an opportunity for some to demonstrate their love to their family members and say thank you to the support they'd received during their imprisonment. For many, this was the first time their families had seen them do anything remotely theatrical, and they described how shocked and impressed their families were that they could even do it, never mind actually do it well. One said it was really important to show his family, I'm here and I've done wrong, but I'm going to show you that I can do something good while I'm in here. I'm not just sitting here doing nothing, serving my time, I'm actually doing something positive. So rather than perceiving themselves as a source of pain to their children, they became perhaps a source of joy and happy memories. For the 2 weeks of the project, their children knew that their dads were completely focused on doing something for them. These moments start to reveal the hope in this work. Here on this project, I witnessed and talked to participants who struggled to be fathers, to be connected with the outside world, who struggled to be connected with their children and the normal day-to-day lives, but who were attempting to transform those lives. During the project, some of these men talked about their newfound determination to make concrete changes in their lives as a result of working on this play. For one participant who'd served lots of prison sentences because of a heroin addiction, this was especially the case. His daughter was 2.5 years old, but due to his imprisonment, he'd only lived with her for 12 weeks of her life. He said, I haven't been a dad, I can't call myself a dad. His motivation for taking part was an attempt to build a relationship with his daughter. He said that the 2 weeks of the project had given him an opportunity to focus his mind on his daughter when he hadn't done that in the past. He reflected, she's only young now, I can stop. I don't want her not to have a dad, like I did. I've had all my life without a dad. I don't want the same for her. I want her dad, me, to be there. There's loads of things that this play has done for me, and that's just one. His participating in the play project allowed him to tangibly demonstrate that he was serious about being a father and serious about trying not to reoffend. His relationship with his mother had also been seriously damaged. Although he'd been drug-free for 2 years, she remained cynical and didn't believe this was the case. So she refused to visit him in prison. The play project was the first time she'd visited him in prison in over 13 years of imprisonment. It showed her that he wanted to build bridges and to catch up on the missed years and to give something back. After the project, his family said that they were proud of him. He was completely overwhelmed as he hadn't heard that word for a very long time. One of the main motivations for taking part in the play project for all the men was to have a chance to spend quality time with their children on the visit afterwards. Because it was a family visit and outside rather than in the visit hall, the general attitude was, as one participant bluntly stated, I'll do anything to get that visit. Participants saw the entire day as their chance for children to have a positive visiting experience and a chance to create happy memories for them as a family. I can't prove this project will stop them from reoffending, but it might have created the subtle changes needed for them to reevaluate their lives. Some claimed that participating in the project was the first step to making real changes. A recurring theme during the post-project interviews was that taking part in the play had boosted participants' self-confidence. This sense of achievement made many of them feel that there were possibilities of hope for a different future. So maybe this work has the potential to be more than a means of just making well-behaved, docile prisoners. For many, surviving, their words, not mine, the play project made them believe that I can do something with my life other than be a failure. Importantly, it raised their expectations of themselves and helped them to constructively challenge and disrupt the negative identities that they'd internalized before and during their prison sentences. They began to see themselves as capable, professional people who were skilled and able. They were more than just a prisoner. When interviewed several weeks after the performance, there was some evidence that this relabeling process had proved a catalyst for change. For some participants, there were tangible outcomes. An example of this is one had been deliberating whether to ask to move to a training prison where there would be more opportunities to undertake courses and do educational things as part of his sentence. Participating in the play project gave him the confidence to take that step. Docility or transformation, or a combination of the two? I'm not sure, but I do know from the feedback from the prisoners that their lives and their families' lives were made much richer by the experience. We hope that we've demonstrated that in encountering these projects and many others like it, our students engage not just in a training in how to deliver projects like this, how to do applied theatre, but also they consider the social and ethical issues surrounding the complex areas that we work in when we talk about inclusive theatre. Thank you.
Maybe that's it. That's it. Is that it? No, I think they're doing
¿Hay alguna pregunta?
Hola, buenos días. Bueno, felicidades por la exposición. Tengo muchas preguntas. Bueno, traducción, ¿no?
Translator?
I have any question.
We don't have a... We need a translator. Could the translator come out?
No, because they're translating questions.
But they could just do it in English. Oh.
Los hemos pedido, ¿eh? Los van a subir.
¿Alguien tenía una pregunta?
Sí, que hablaban de que tenían 250 proyectos y la pregunta que me surge sobre esto es que son proyectos de la universidad, quién los dirige, cómo se financian o cómo se hace el seguimiento, ¿están involucrados los estudiantes en estos 250 proyectos?
The students involved, you said there were 250 projects in total.
Yes.
All your students involved, how many students were involved in those? What's the student involvement in those? I've got the microphone.
Yeah. In both of those projects, there were about 6 students in each year that took place in those. But while those 6 students, the other 300 or so are working on similar and also very different projects out in community settings, working in similar ways but with different type community groups. So every undergraduate student on the applied theatre course has the opportunity to work in a community setting of their choice in an intense way over a residency of between 2 and 6 weeks or longer. Does that answer your question?
Or to term.
Sí, gracias. Pero cuando hablabas de proyectos en el extranjero...
It's not being translated.
Oh,
no, wait a minute. Sorry.
Can you tell about the projects you do abroad?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, I hadn't pressed the channel thing.
Do you want to do Africa?
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Okay, so we have lots of projects actually happening abroad every year. Some of those projects are group projects which are mainly set up by ourselves or by colleagues because we, through trial and error actually, we feel that we are looking for partnerships, whether it's another institution or whether it's an organisation who has also got similar experiences and skills working in that country, doing similar work. Or, for example, you know, or it doesn't have to necessarily be drama, but something related to social inclusion. And so we set up these projects. Sometimes we have groups that go out,
grupos que viajan al extranjero, grupos de 6 normalmente, pero los estudiantes pasan por un proceso de solicitud y formación muy riguroso. También los tutores les acompañan y, por ejemplo, en Sudáfrica, de hecho, hay estudiantes de este año que están trabajando con residencias para ancianos, y hay residencias ahí para ancianos blancos y hay residencias para ancianos negros que están en Sudáfrica, y utilizarán técnicas dramatúrgicas especiales que practicaremos ahí sobre el terreno para alentar a un tipo de diálogo. Este proyecto ocupará unas 6 semanas. Esto tiene sus problemas, Sellina lo comentaba, ¿no? Si no es un poco un teatro de guerrilla en el que uno va, actúa y luego se va. Puede ser algo cuestionable. Pero está esta oportunidad de formación, y sin duda si no se hace, entonces no va a suceder. Y también en nuestras colaboraciones o asociaciones lo que buscamos es que haya un compromiso para comprometerse a unas buenas prácticas, eso primero, pero también que los profesionales trabajen con los estudiantes ahí, porque nosotros no siempre podemos acudir. También Sellina se encarga de una unidad de asignación de profesionales en los que nosotros montamos, organizamos, o a veces son los propios estudiantes, pero que busca acordar bien la organización, y los estudiantes se pasan unas 8 semanas en entornos, puede ser un hospital o un teatro, por ejemplo, con una compañía o una cárcel, y van probando distintas prácticas de teatro aplicado en esas 8 semanas. Pero de nuevo, nuestra relación con el estudiante en ese entorno es muy importante, porque así esperamos también que estas organizaciones apoyen al estudiante. Es algo muy riguroso. Sí, no sé si responde a tu pregunta, ¿sí?
Hola. Bueno, muchas gracias por vuestras aportaciones, que me han interesado muchísimo. Yo tengo dos preguntas. Una es referente a vuestros programas formativos, sean a nivel de máster o de bachelor, si la metodología está muy orientada, evidentemente, hacia la práctica, pero si está orientada a través de proyectos. Es decir, si los alumnos tienen primero una fase más académica y después prácticas, o desde el inicio están inmersos en proyectos prácticos. Y una segunda pregunta es referente a la formación que creo que también hacéis en la Central de dramaterapia, y si podríais explicar un poco esta formación.
Okay. First question.
La primera pregunta. Dependerá de si hablas del bachelor o del máster. En la licenciatura, el bachelor, integramos teoría y práctica desde el principio, pero no les situamos en un entorno de prácticas ya desde el principio. Sobre todo al principio teoría, ética, y luego poco a poco les vamos sacando. Tal vez empiecen en un centro escolar trabajando muy de cerca con el profesor y en un grupo con 6 personas observando el trabajo, más que facilitando ellos mismos, observan a los facilitadores, y luego al segundo año de la licenciatura, del bachelor, es cuando emprenden estos proyectos. Para entonces ya tienen una buena base, tanto en la teoría como en la práctica, y además nosotros les supervisamos, y como decía Liselle, cuando van a este tipo de proyectos hay organizaciones que cuidan de ellos, que aportan la organización. Así que el tercer año luego ya es cuando hay esta asignación individual donde trabajan como profesionales junto con expertos en el tema. El programa de másters tiende ya a atraer a profesionales, expertos, gente que ha trabajado en inclusión social, en trabajo comunitario durante mucho tiempo, pero que quieren algún tipo de certificación que les apoye en su experiencia o que quieren trabajar en direcciones distintas. Así que a menudo este programa de máster empieza ya desde la primera semana o la segunda haciendo prácticas junto con la parte teórica en las clases. Únicamente decir que desde el primer año los estudiantes tienen distintas unidades que tienen que completar. Por ejemplo, modalidades de práctica en las que analizamos las formas del teatro y también verán algunas actuaciones representadas por compañeros. También muchos profesionales que trabajan en el campo vienen para contar lo que consideran una buena práctica y sí que lo queremos que piensen y que practiquen también las dos cosas. La segunda era sobre la terapia dramatúrgica, ¿no? La segunda pregunta. Nosotros únicamente lo tenemos dentro del programa de másters, no aceptamos a estudiantes que tengan menos de 24 años. Es algo infrecuente en el Reino Unido porque un programa de másters de 18 meses, de hecho no es lo habitual, normalmente solo duran un año. Y este máster en terapia dramatúrgica implica que estos participen en la terapia, que ellos sean terapeutas y son unos 18 meses muy intensos trabajando en hospitales, en centros de salud mental, instituciones parecidas. Nosotros no impartimos clases ahí, pero sí que sabemos cómo funciona. Es un máster muy centrado en cómo utilizar las artes dramáticas como técnica terapéutica de forma individualizada con participantes que creen que pueden necesitar este tipo de terapia. Y también con grupos, sí, terapia grupal. Pero hay una página web de la escuela y también tenemos folletos, ahí puedes ver más información. Me encantaría saber la respuesta de las personas al respecto. Tal vez esta tarde tengamos más la oportunidad de ver las opiniones, porque creo que tenemos un seminario, ¿sí? Una mesa redonda al respecto. Y creo que además ya vamos mal de tiempo.